Hello, my name is Andy, and I am the village idiot, and I'm on with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. Welcome back to Bassetlaw, and today I'm in a village that I've been waiting to do for a long time. This one has some very special memories for me in various guises. There's a house that means something to me, the school means something to me, there's another building which means something to me. I absolutely love this place, and I hope you will do too. Welcome to the beautiful little village of Beckingham. Beckingham is a village and civil parish in the Bassetlaw district of Nottinghamshire, about 3 miles west of Gainsborough, which is over the border and into Lincolnshire. According to the 2001 census, it had a population of 1,168, reducing slightly to 1,098 at the 2011 census. Beckingham is one of the most northerly villages of Nottinghamshire. It lies in the Trent Valley within a triangle of counties. 3 miles to the east of the village lies the River Trent in the county of Lincolnshire, and 10 miles to the north is Yorkshire. The Trent has long provided a source of income for the village residents. I would be here all day if I tried to tell you everything about Beckingham. Luckily, there's an amazing website which you can view, which details all sorts of things about the village. The website also has lots of information pertaining to the small village of Saundby, which we covered a while ago. You may remember from that episode, Saundby and Beckingham used to be one parish before going their own ways. They're still closely associated with one another though. It's believed that Beckingham was founded by the Angles, and it's generally accepted that a building for Christian worship existed on the site of the present All Saints Church. So this is interesting. This is a garage door that's been painted. Isn't that amazing? Horses and highwaymen, maybe? Is that what that's supposed to be? It's really good though, I have to admit. For such a small village, you'd never believe that Beckingham was so important for a lot of industrial reasons. A little later on, we'll see some of that industry is still in action today. However, through time, Beckingham has been known for oil, natural gas, shipbuilding and willow weaving. It's crazy to think, seeing as I'm familiar with this village, but I knew none of that before I made this video. Let's start with oil and natural gas. It was first discovered in July 1985 by BP, with production starting in October 1987. The oil field here is known as the Gainsborough Beckingham oil field, and there are wells fracked using lower fluid volumes than used for shale techniques. As far as willow weaving goes, that took place at the Willow Works, which we'll see later. It was a cottage industry for much of the second half of the 1800s and the first half of the 1900s. To provide the raw materials for the industry, willow beds existed around Beckingham. In its heyday, there were probably some 50 hectares dedicated to willow growing around the village. Barn owls have used the old Willow Works for nesting for many years, which might explain a sculpture that's coming up shortly in the landmarks section. As for shipbuilding, that was thanks to one man, Spencer Compton Watson, who acquired what is now Trent Wharfage on the western bank of the River Trent. Much of the village benefited from that acquisition. The business prospered, and as well as the shipyard and offices, a number of workmen's houses were built within the village. Some have since been demolished, but he would also build the Beckingham Institute and adjoining houses in the High Street, which provided a library, reading room and cafe. Add to this too that milling was also a thing in these parts. A tower windmill was built sometime prior to 1840 to the north of the village. It was straight-sided and had 2 pairs of millstones driven by 4 common sails. Even as recently as 25 years ago, wildlife was richer than it is now in Beckingham, mainly due to the intensification of arable agriculture. The areas of the village which seem to hold the greatest abundance and diversity of wildlife these days are the inhabited parts. That said, there's still Beckingham Marshes too, which is an RSPB site out to the east. Beckingham's history group is one of the strongest of its type I've ever come across. In addition to the open days held in the village, the group have also taken to the road to display their material at Gainsborough Old Hall. Of course, Beckingham's history runs much deeper than all of this. I'm barely scratching the surface. The late Peter Mason was the local historian who collated much of this information. Okay, so when we finish the main walk around, I'm going to be driving down there and across that level crossing you can see in the distance towards Willow Works and Trent Wharfage. Now, something about Trent Wharfage, I won't be able to capture any of it from this side of the river because I've had a look on the map and all you can see really is just a big building. You can't really see anything of the wharf. However, Gainsborough is very close to here, and if I go across Trent Bridge and into Gainsborough, there's a road which is directly opposite on the other side of the river where I can capture the wharf, and that's where I'm going to end today's episode. For 100 years, the railway station at that crossing was a busy part of village life, until the passenger services closed on the 2nd of November 1959, followed by the end of goods services on the 19th of August 1963. The Royal Train has been known to pass through Beckingham, the last time being in 2003 when the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh were on their Jubilee tour of the United Kingdom. Beckingham has not been without flooding problems in the past, the most notable floods occurring in 1947 on something referred to as Black Saturday. Unlike Walkeringham, both Beckingham and Gainsborough avoided any serious flooding in 2007, thanks in part to the area between the railway line and the River Trent, which is designated as a floodplain. Flooding problems haven't affected the average house price here, it's still a pretty healthy £167,000. Demographically, Beckingham's population density is 165.9 and 99.1% of its residents are white British citizens. The parish church of All Saints is mostly of the 13th century, though the exterior is apparently 15th century. The west tower has buttresses, battlements, gargoyles and pinnacles. There's a north chancel chapel and sedilia. It's a Grade 2 listed building. The chancel was restored by Ewan Christian in 1876 and the church was further restored in 1891 and 1892. Some cracking appeared in the chancel several years ago. After some technical advice was sought, repair works to address this was underway by 2019. The Bus Times website lists 8 services through Beckingham, although 2 of them are school services into Gainsborough. 95, 97 and 98 are your main 3 numbers. At Beckingham's southern end is the village hall, a playing field, a bowls club and play area. This entire area has a lengthy backstory which began in 1944 when the football club was being formed. The only other sports club at that time was a cricket club, and the 2 clubs decided the village should have a proper sports ground so that they would not have to ask local farmers for the use of a field. A village meeting resulted in the Watson family donating 7.7 acres of land in May 1946, which is now the playing field. The opening ceremony of the village hall was 2 years later in 1948, and from that the formation of the village tennis, bowls and hockey clubs took place. So I said at the start of this video that Beckingham holds some very special memories for me, none more so than this place, the Beckingham Institute. Now in there you'll find, or you did find a number of years ago, but I'm going back about 20 years here, you'll find some snooker tables, some dartboards, all that kind of thing. And I used to have a friend who lived in the village, and we used to come here and play each other in the Institute. Generally speaking, I won. Beckingham has a small but attractive village green, which is where you'll come across the old red phone box, and this is now a book exchange. The recreation room was originally a primitive Methodist chapel. The date on the building is shown as 1836, but it's believed to date from earlier. There's a plaque on the outside of the building commemorating Beckingham winning the Best Kept Village competition in 1985. Just before I leave this behind, it's worth noting there are 2 plaques on the wall. There's one on the other side too, which is the same thing. It just basically says that Beckingham won the Best Kept Village in 2013 as well. Beckingham School holds memories for me too. It was where I undertook my final placement when I was at college. It was built in 1901 on a piece of land donated by the Watson family. Beckingham Board School 1900 is carved upon it. There's a shop on the green. I've always known this little shop to be open, so it was a surprise to see it closed. Further research after filming told me it was closed permanently in 2020. And on Station Road there's a cattery close to the level crossing. You don't see very many of these around. It's always good to spot one. Beckingham's old railway station is much like Walkeringham's to the north. Both were on the same loop line from Gainsborough to Doncaster. The railway line was not built with passengers in mind, but with the intention to move freight southwards, primarily coal from South Yorkshire. The Willow Works would also use the railway. Here's a familiar road. This is the A631. As it passes Beckingham, it's a dual carriageway, known as the Beckingham Bypass. It was built in 1975 with soil from the Gainsborough Relief Road. This eventually becomes the Flood Road, which we met in Saundby before heading towards Trent Bridge and into Gainsborough. Beckingham's War Memorial is almost hidden in plain sight. It's located in the cemetery adjacent to the churchyard. There are some other memorials too inside the church. There's a lovely memorial on the green, erected for the millennium as well, seen here in front of the shop. Prior to Beckingham School being built in 1901, children were taught at the old school on the High Street. This was built in 1854 on a piece of land belonging to the Church of England. Here's the former Methodist chapel, the second one the village has had in fact. The land on which it stands was donated to the village by the wealthy Cross family in 1894. On the village green you'll also find the remains of an old ash tree, the tall stump of which has now been carved into a large barn owl. Now we're down Station Road and over the railway line, where we find Beckingham Marshes, which is the RSPB Nature Reserve mentioned earlier. Parking for the marshes can be found at the old Willow Works, which is directly opposite. Products made at the Willow Works included everyday objects such as chairs and baskets. It's not known how many genuine Beckingham willow products still exist, or tools that would have been used to prepare the material for weaving. Okay, at the risk of making this video all about my memories, here's the house I was talking about. That house holds so many memories for me. The friend that I used to play at the Beckingham Institute at snooker and darts and things like that, he lived right there. I tell you, the memories are flooding right back right now. So that brings the main walk around Beckingham to a close. Now, where I've parked here on Church Street, I've gone in a circle from here around the church, then around the village and come back here. So we haven't seen anything that's that way. So now the camera is going on the dashboard and I'm going to drive down that road. It's a straightish road with a bend in it at the end towards Walkeringham, and we need to go out there anyway because Beckingham has some nodding donkeys which we've met before in Bassetlaw. Let's see if we can find them. Now normally after the main walk around I turn the Strava app off on my phone, but on this occasion I forgot. As a result, the map at the end will show you the location of the oil wells we're heading to, which is where I remembered. So we've seen these things before on the channel, but I don't think we've seen one working yet, have we? Well, we have now. Look at this. Here's a nodding donkey in action. So there are two in there. One on the left obviously not working, but the one on the right definitely is. And this is just two. These are just two of the nodding donkeys you'll find around here, because there are some other ones. There's one over the other side of the road somewhere, and then on the A161 towards Misterton there's I think 3 more, I think, if I remember rightly. So there you go, nodding donkeys in action. Amazing. So to finish, we're on the other side of the Trent in Gainsborough to look at Trent Wharfage. This was known as the Free Wharf or Watson's Shipyard and was founded in 1889. Watson brought both equipment and some of his workforce from Blackwall, London, and possibly from Fulham. His sister lived in Willingham in West Lindsey, which may have influenced his move to this area. Steel craft of all types were built at the yard, including coasting vessels, tugs, barges, fishing vessels, pontoons and dredgers. Completed boats were either launched directly into the Trent here, or they were sent by rail to Hull, from where they were shipped to the port of reassembly. So there is actually a boat on the wharf at the moment, but I can't capture it because the trees are in the way. But there you go, that's Beckingham Trent Wharfage, albeit from the West Lindsey side of the River Trent. And West Lindsey is where I'm going to be staying now, because my next parish is over this side of the Trent, and you'll see that in a few days time here on the channel. It's been great to be back in Beckingham, a place that I know so very well. Lovely. This has been the parish of Beckingham, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.